Like every page that I was looking at, there was a friend, somebody whom I know.
I'm standing with Sharm Tabe in the kitchen of his Toronto West End home. He's flipping through the pages of what looks like a glossy Farsi language magazine. But it's actually a list of names of political prisoners who were executed in Iran between 1979 and 1984. There's page after page of names. And how many people do you think are listed here?
In this list, it's something like 12,000. And there is another one there, which is another probably maybe same number.
Sharm's name could also have been on that list.
And the ages are 20 years old, 19, 18, 15 years old. It blows my mind. Like, I am one of the luckiest people who managed to leave Iran.
In 1983, he fled his home, and 2 years later made a very dramatic entrance into Canada on the runway at Gander Airport. Now Shahram is one of the millions who became Canadian by choice. Every week, we bring you the story of one of those Canadians who had to risk everything to get here. My name is Natasha Fateh, and this is Promised Land. Today, Escape from Iran. In 1978, Sharm Tabe was a student at the Polytechnic University in Tehran.
Young people crowding into the middle of the street and celebrating this final departure by the Shah.
He was an active participant in the demonstrations that forced the Shah of Iran to abdicate the throne.
All power is concentrated in the Ayatollah's hands and that of his Revolutionary Council.
Like so many, he was a supporter of Ayatollah Khomeini, the Shah's most powerful opponent. But soon after Khomeini took power, Sharm lost faith in the revolution. Instead of the plural democracy that they had fought for, Sharm and his friends realized they were now living under an oppressive Islamic theocracy.
1 week after the historic referendum to end the monarchy and formally approve an Islamic republic, I found much of the euphoria of the revolution wearing thin. There's much talk these days of counter-revolutionaries.
So in less than 1 year, Sharm went from being a supporter of the revolution to a vocal opponent of the new regime.
It was a very difficult decision for me. It's like abandoning your child, because in a way, revolution was something that I was very proud of, and I was part of the leaders of the student movement there. Turning my back to the revolution basically meant I am abandoning all those values that I fought for. But I was holding into those values, and it was Khomeini and his followers who turned their back.
Khomeini and his followers were also aware of Sharm's shift, and soon his anti-government activities brought an end to his academic career.
What they did was that they just closed all the schools, all the universities in Iran, and they said that we want to turn it into Islamic system, and nobody knew what it means. How can you Islamicize thermodynamics, for example? How can you Islamicize physics? But anyway, we were out of school for 2 years, and then they announced that all the schools are reopening, and the students can go back except those anti-revolutionary ones. And then the day that we were supposed to go for registration, there was a big, huge list outside the university with the names of the students who are considered anti-revolutionary. And of course, my name was there.
Sharm had been kicked out of school, so he took a job as a TV producer in Tehran. But soon the consequences of his political activity became more serious. One afternoon, an old friend, who had now become a high-ranking official in the Khomeini government, called him into his office.
He asked me to go there immediately. He didn't want to talk over the phone. He didn't want to leave any evidence or anything, but he told me in person that he knows that the secret police is after me. They are coming to arrest me. So he told me that as soon as you leave this office, just pack your stuff and leave the country. Don't say goodbye to anybody. Just leave immediately. And that was what I did.
But he did tell some members of his family, who'd already been trying to convince him to leave. They'd even started making arrangements, so when he gave them the word, they just put their plan into action. At that time, in January of 1983, there were lots of people trying to leave Iran. It wasn't just political dissidents like Shahram. There were also thousands of young draftees trying to avoid military service in the Iran-Iraq war. With all that demand, it was easy to find smugglers in Tehran who could arrange an escape through the mountains and into Turkey. The cost of the trip, $15,000.
Smugglers always draw a very nice picture that it's no problem. We will leave today and tomorrow you will be in Van, the first Turkish city, and then from there we will send you wherever you want. Do you want to go to the United States? No problem. You want to go to Sweden? No problem. They were just drawing a very nice and easy picture of fleeing Iran, while in fact it was not easy at all.
This is how the plan worked. The smugglers transported the group north by bus. After that, they hooked up with a network of villagers who could guide them through the mountains. They traveled by foot and by horseback, and only at night.
The picture that I had was totally, now that I look at it, it looks like a caricature rather than a reality. Like I thought that, okay, I will walk through these mountains. I had no idea how difficult it would be, or how cold, or how warm, or whatever. Then when I started the trip, first thing was that it's much longer and much more difficult than I thought. It was in January, actually, and it was a cold time in Iran, especially in the border mountains between Iran and Turkey. It's like tons of snow. But we had to be very light because we had to walk fast. So we had like running shoes. We had, well, good clothes, but good, when I say good, it's good like for walking in the streets in the winter, not crossing mountains for 1 week during the night time in like snow up to your waist.
Finally, the group arrived in the Turkish city of Van, and from there, they took a bus to Istanbul. And what happened in Istanbul?
Istanbul, I have my best and my worst memories from that city. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. And the first few weeks was my best time ever. We were going out and we were going to all these beautiful places, islands, swimming in the Black Sea and so on and so forth.
At first, Sharm thought he would just hang out in Istanbul for a few months. Eventually, things would cool down back home and he would just go back. But then reality set in.
And then after like 2-3 weeks, I realized that even Turkey is not a safe place for Iranians, because the Turkish police would have arrested people. They knew that Iranians are in trouble, and they would have, as soon as they realized that you are Iranian, they would have come to you, they would try to arrest you, and if you didn't pay them, if you didn't bribe them, there was a very big chance that they would have arrested you and very brutally sent you back to Iran. And they didn't care if you were executed or put into prison or whatever. I was like a sitting duck for Turkish police to arrest me and send me back. So I again found another smuggler who now helped people to get out of Turkey.
So Sharm decided to seek asylum in Western Europe. And at that time, Sweden was accepting refugees from Iran. So Sharm planned to make his way there and make a claim once he arrived.
So I got a false visa. And we were supposed to go through the airport, fly to Poland, take the train to Gdansk, which is a port city, north port city in Poland. And then from there you take a ferry to Sweden.
Sounds good.
Perfect. But it was not as nice as a vacation. What happened then was that 2 smugglers who were competing, one of them reported the other one. And we just happened to be the clients of the second one, the one who was reported.
Sharm was in a group of 18. There were 17 men and 1 woman, his cousin who had recently joined him in Istanbul. One by one, as they stood in line at the airport, they were picked up by the Turkish police.
Among all these 18 people, only 2 or 3 people could speak Turkish. 2 of them were very young, like 15, 16 years old kids again. And there was one adult person in his early 20s, like myself. And he was a really insane person. Like, now that I think about him, I strongly believe that he had some kind of mental problem.
What did he do?
What he did was that he was just telling the police there, and to us and to the Turkish police, that we are here in the transit area. Transit area is an international soil, and the Turkish police cannot do anything to us. And we want a press conference tomorrow, right here, right now.
And you're listening to this and you're thinking what?
Yes, of course. Like I was trying to calm him down and tell him that don't do that. It's still a Turkish territory, and even if it is an international soil, it's in Turkey. Turkey is a military country. It's a dictatorship, just like Iran.
Well, Sharm's translator did not get that press conference. Instead, the whole group was taken by bus straight to Bayram Pasha, the biggest prison in Istanbul. What was that time in prison like?
That was my worst memory ever. Like, you cannot imagine. It was like a hell. Like, imagine a house, just a regular normal house size. 172 people were sleeping in that small area. All of us were having lice and all these diseases, and everybody was smoking there, and it was just like hell. And there were these rats as big as a small dog, and they were not afraid of us. It was horrible.
Was it ever violent in the prison?
No, it was not. From that point of view, we were lucky, because all those people in that cell, they were like all smugglers, all the thieves, gang people, drug dealers, all those kind of people, they were there. But at the same time, there were some Iranian students there who were in prison because they had attacked and occupied Iranian consulate, actually, in Istanbul. They were put in jail, and those students, because they were activists and they were very well organized, they had took control of the whole prison, the whole cell. And they wouldn't let anybody do anything wrong to others. Otherwise we were just a bunch of like small kids, and it's unimaginable that you live like 15, 16 years old kids together with these big guys in the same prison. If those students were not there, we would have definitely been raped and be abused. But those students were our guardian angels.
After 3 months in Bayram Pasha, Shahram and his companions were brought before a judge who convicted them, but sentenced them to the time they had already served.
We were free. But, again, there's a but here. Being free in Turkey for a foreigner means that you are transferred from one prison to another, to a kind of jail, a temporary jail. And you have to find a Turkish citizen who will bail you out, who will be your guarantor. And just imagine that where could we find some Turkish? Who would come to bail you out? So anyway, again, what happened was that friends of us who were outside, they were very smart this time. They went and they paid Turkish prostitutes. They were paying them $100 each, which was equivalent of like 1 month of salary. And then they came and bailed us out. But even finding prostitutes who would do that was not that easy. Like, it took 1 week until they found enough prostitutes. And then one by one, we left the prison that way.
So now they were really free. But Sharm knew that they had to get out of Turkey. And he thought he might get some help from a man that he met while he was still behind bars.
There was a very nice guy in the prison whom I befriended. He was there because he was trying to smuggle 30 kilograms of heroin from Turkey to Italy. In Turkey, at least those days, if you were caught with these narcotics, it doesn't matter how much, it was like 1 gram for personal use, or it was like 30 kilograms to smuggle to Italy. The sentence was 33 years in jail. This guy was in prison with me, and he used to be a Turkish police before becoming a smuggler. Anyway, he was telling me that, don't worry, when you are out of prison, then come to me and don't go to any of these smugglers. Those are like nasty people and they will do bad things to you, and don't go to them. Just come to me and I will send you off. And I was thinking to myself, what is he talking about? He is here, he will be here for another 33 years and I will be out of this jail in like months. How dare he tells me to go to him and ask him to help me out of the country. But as a matter of fact, he had his court at some time, and then he came back and I went to him and I said, so how did it go? He said, oh, very good. They found out that what I was smuggling was not heroin, but it was just sugar. Just imagine 30 kilograms of sugar from Turkey to Italy. Well, these mistakes happen sometimes. But anyway, he was released. He was released before me. A month or so before I leave the prison, he was out.
So once he was on the outside, Sharm looked for his heroin/sugar smuggling friend, and he promised to help get Sharm out of Turkey. But Sharm didn't need help getting out of Turkey. He already had that covered. But there was one thing he needed help with.
The only thing that I was never able to do was to bribe the police. I never learned it. Not in Iran, not in Turkey, never. So eventually, like after a couple of meetings, I told him that's what I need. Like I have the passport, I have the visa, false visa and everything. But I just need him to send somebody with me, so he bribes the police for me. And it's okay, no problem. I will send one of my kids. His kid was an Iranian guy. He sent him with me and my cousin and a few friends, a couple of friends that we were traveling together. And we went to the airport, and then that guy just walked through the custom and everywhere, and then eventually we ended up in the custom office, like the police officer. And then the police officer, as usual, he was just bringing all these excuses not to get money from us because he knew that we are Iranian. And then this guy who was with me, he told me that, okay, now is the time. Just give him the $50. That was the amount of money that I was supposed to give. Give him the $50. And then I was just standing there like a statue. I was frozen. I couldn't move my hand. And then he again told me, give him the $50 for God's sake. And then I couldn't. Eventually he just got the money out of my hand and put it in front of him, the police guy, and closed the book or something that was there, just closed it over the money and passed it to him. And then he immediately stamped the passports and like 10 minutes later, we were sitting in the airplane, and the guy was standing right there without any passport, without any ticket. He was standing there and waving at us, waving bye.
And now the story gets even more complicated. Sharm and his friends flew from Istanbul to Berlin, in communist East Germany. From there, they took a ferry to Denmark, and then caught another plane which took them back behind the Iron Curtain to Moscow. Okay, from Moscow, they booked an Aeroflot flight to Havana. But Havana wasn't their desired destination. You see, Sharm knew that the plane was going to stop to refuel in Gander, Newfoundland, and that's where he planned to jump out and apply for asylum.
My plan was that we wait until they open the door. And then as soon as they open the door, we jump out. But it didn't go as we planned, again, as usual. Two crazy guys with us. And then even before the plane stops, they went to the door and they were standing there waiting for the plane to stop, and they jump out. And then the hostess was suspicious of them. Why they have to sit at that time? They cannot just walk around. And the hostess came to them and asked them to go back and sit, and they said that no. And then they started to just argue with the hostess.
What were you thinking at that moment?
I was trying to calm them down. Again, I was asking them to come back and sit, and I was telling them that don't worry, they will open the door, and then when they open the door, we will go out. But they didn't listen to me. Eventually, then they started to try to open the airplane door.
These two crazy guys are trying to open the door.
And then at that point, other crew, they saw that there is a big argument right there, and they came to help that hostess. And then when I saw that that's our only chance, and we don't want to miss it at any cost. So I went and helped them, as a matter of fact.
Sharm, if you didn't get out in Gander, what the heck were you going to do in Havana?
Actually, you know what? The pilot was coming out and was telling us that don't do this, don't go here, don't stay here in Canada. Canada is not a right place for you. Just stay with us. I will take you to Havana, and I will promise you that they will give you asylum there. You become refugee in Cuba. Why do you want to stay in Canada? And I said, just shut up, let us go. And then we were trying to open the door, and they were trying to close keep the door closed, and so on and so forth. Eventually, we managed to open the door for 2 seconds, and then two of us jumped outside, and then they closed the door again. So now, myself and one other person, we were outside, and then the rest of us were inside. And then now we were trying to open the door from outside, and they were trying to keep the door closed from inside. And then there was this RCMP guy at the foot of the stairs. He was just standing there and laughing at us. Somehow he knew what was going on, probably has seen this before. Anyway, we eventually managed to get everybody out, and then we talked to that RCMP guy. And then later on, he told me that you didn't need to do any of these things that you did. You could have just sit in your seats, and I would have come into the plane anyway. And that was enough to tell me that you want to stay here in Canada. And that was all. But anyway, we didn't know, and that was another James Bond movie at that stage.
Nearly 2 years after leaving Iran, Sharm Tabe was in Canada. But he actually didn't know very much about his new home.
Actually, it's very interesting. The picture that I had from Canada, it's big nature with lots of moose all over the place, and so on and so forth. And then the very first morning that I woke up and I left the motel that we were staying in, I saw a moose right there in front of me. I thought, okay, so that's Canada. That's what I want. But that moose was the first and the last moose that I ever saw in Canada in all these 25 years.
Promised Land is produced by Mark Ulster and me. Dagna Pilaskevich is our associate producer. Special thanks this week to David McDougall and Brian Dawes. I'm Natasha Fatah. Thanks for listening.